Hello and welcome to Petrosys webinars. My name is Jason Dixon and I'll be running today's webinar on customizing color gradients. Please note that we will be recording this webinar so that it can be put up onto our Petrosys website later on for everyone to view. So please hold your questions until the end and I'll answer them all then. So today we're going to have a look at color gradients and how we can extract the most information from our gradient to display information to our audience. So we'll run through an agenda. We'll go through an introduction about the different color gradients and how we can use those. I'll run a demonstration demonstrating how we can edit our color gradients. I'll do two different scenarios for that, and then we'll run through some final thoughts on how we can use those to display different information to our audience. So an introduction. Why do we need to change our color gradients? It's a great way to define gas, oil, water contacts, and we can also use it to direct attention to a specific part of our grid that we want our audience to focus on. And we can also use it to bring out more detail from the grid as well, so we can focus on a certain area of the grid and bring out the detail in that grid and direct the audience attention to that part of the grid. We can also create customized color gradients, so we can create new control points to add information and more detail into certain parts of our grid. We can edit those control points by changing the colors, slide them up and down along the gradient to bring more information into a certain area of that gradient. We can also select the colors using an eyedropper, so if we have an existing gradient that we like, we can use the eyedropper to copy those colors onto our new gradient. And we can also change the way that the colors change between those control points, whether we use a radial versus an interpolation method or a linear method. And we can also use gradient values as a percentage of the gradient of the grid that we're going to use, or as an exact value. So if we have an oil water contact at a certain level, we can use an exact value to change those colors at that value. So now I'll run through a demonstration on how we go about doing this. So here we have a grid showing a structure, and we want to display an contact in here. So we're going to put an oil water contact and a gas oil contact in this one by using our gradient. So to start with, we double click on our display grid item in our display list to bring up the display grid panel. We then select from the color gradient section, we single click on there to bring up the gradient selector. Now we want to use the contacts one, so we can select the gas, oil, water, and we're going to edit that. So just click on the edit button. You can see that this is a percentage, so if we selected this straight away, it would just be a percentage of the grid, and it's also set up to be a radial change between one control point to the next. So we're going to change this to be an exact value. So now we can select these control points, and we can see that we have a value tied to those control points. We can slide those up and down. So I'll select the white one, I'll slide that up. We're going to change this value here to be 675, which is our gas oil contact, and we'll apply that value, and you can see that that control point moves to the value. Let's change the top of the oil to 675.1 and apply that value, so that we can see now that we've got our gas contact from the crest down to 675.1. We'll now do the same for our water column. So we can slide those values up, or just type in the value here, which is going to be 755. Apply that value, and then select the blue control point, 755.1, and apply that value again. Once we're happy with that, we can now change that to be a new gradient that we can use. So we can select File, Save As. We can save that to either the project, which will save it just to this Petrosys project, or we can change that and display it, save it to the site, which will give everyone access at the company accessing this Petrosys access to this color gradient. But today we're just going to save it to the project. We'll give it a name, Canaway Contacts. Click OK to that, and now we've saved a new color gradient called Canaway Contacts. So we can click OK to that, and now that appears in our display in our gradient selector list. So we can click OK there, OK to that, and then when we refresh our screen, we'll now have a grid gradient which shows us our gas, oil, and water legs for our structure. What we'll do now is we'll have a look at displaying an elevation grid. So here we have an elevation grid of the same area, and we can see that there's some channels in here that we want to make these stand out much better and look more realistic. So what we'll do in this instance is we'll open up again the display grid layer, click on the color fill selector, scroll down, and this one will select topography. I'll apply that, and you'll have a look at what that looks like. You can see it's quite washed out. It doesn't show us as much information, but it's got the colors that we want to use. So now we'll edit that, and I've got a color gradient that I would like to copy down here. So I'm going to copy this color gradient. So first of all, we need to add in some more control points. So we can just, to add a control point, we click on the end and just drag those in. So we can drag in as many as we like. So now to change these colors, I want to just copy this one, so I can select the color control point that I want to use, select this eyedropper, and then pick that color. Now the next one is down here is going to be white, so we can select this one here, select the eyedropper, and select white as well. I actually clicked on the black. We'll then need to add another control point at this location. Select the color dropper, and we just keep doing this until we've built up our color gradient. I can do this multiple times, bring in several more. And we can just quickly select the items and select their colors. And we'll select the last two. And the final one now. So now that we've saved that color gradient, you can see we've copied the one from below. We can again save that color gradient. We'll save it to the project, and this time we'll call it Canaway Elevation. Click OK to that. OK. Got that again at the top of our list, next to our Canaway contacts. So we can click OK to that. OK. And then when we refresh our screen, we'll have a new gradient which really brings out the channels in our grid. We can also, once we've saved our gradients, in the project area, we've got our Cooper project here, we have a folder called gradients. If we open that up, that will be where our color gradients have been saved. If we go back into here, we can change the way that these are. So here we have it as linear, we can change that to radial, and that will change the way that the color changes between those points. You can see here that adds in a lot of color between those 2 points, and we don't want that, so we'll leave that back at linear. We can also use these slider bars to slide up and down a control point and change the colors that way. Okay. So we'll go back into our PowerPoint presentation now and we'll have a look at how we've changed these. So we ran through how we changed the colors and created a couple of gradients, and so we started off with the Canaway basin. This one we have the elevation grid, and we've changed that to create a grid that really stood out the channels. So this is a different color gradient again. It just shows you that there's different ways that we can set up our gradients to bring out different information on our grid. We also had our structure grid, and we created our oil water contacts for those. So there's some final thoughts. So editing gradients can be a really great way for viewers to have their attention directed to a desired location on our map. It's also great to produce more definition from the grid. So we saw in our elevation grid, elevation is quite limited on that. There's only a few hundred meters, so we can use the grids to really define that and bring that out. And we can use the dripper or the red, green, blue sliders to edit the control color points. And we can use the linear and radial interpolation between those control points to define how those colors change between our control points. And we can save these to the project or the site level for use, so we can use those. And we can also pick up those files from our project folder and copy those into other projects if we would like to use those in another project as well. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please ask those now. We can also contact support@petrosys.com.au for more information. If you have any issues with that, we can also send information through to info@petrosys.com.au, or you can look at our website where we have a lot of other videos that you can look at as well. And this will be loaded onto the videos website as soon as we can get that uploaded. Thank you, and I'll take some questions now.